What would change in your life if you had $100,000 sitting in your accounts? Not $1 million, not 10 million, just $100,000. For some people, that number sounds impossible. For others, it sounds like the beginning. But here's the part most people don't understand. Your first $100,000 is usually harder than your next $100,000. Because when you're starting from zero, you don't have much working for you. No massive investment portfolio, no huge passive income, no millions earning interest in the background. You have something much more important: your ability to increase your income, control your expenses, and consistently invest the difference. And once you understand that game, $100,000 stops looking like a fantasy. It becomes a mathematical target. So in this video, we're going to break down exactly how someone starting from zero could approach their first $100,000, not through a get-rich-quick scheme, not through gambling on meme stocks, and not by pretending you can become a millionaire overnight. Instead, we're going to build the wealth machine, step by step. Imagine two people. Person A has $1,000. Person B has $100,000 invested. If both earn an average 8% return in a hypothetical example, Person A earns roughly $80. Person B earns roughly $8,000. Same percentage. Completely different result. That's because money starts making money once you have enough of it invested. This is why the first $100,000 is so important. You're not just chasing a number. You're trying to build the machine that eventually produces larger numbers. But there's another reason the first $100,000 is difficult. You can't invest your way out of a low income very easily. If you're earning $40,000 a year and spending almost all of it, simply finding a slightly better investment isn't going to transform your life. Your biggest financial asset at the beginning isn't your stock portfolio. It's your income. And that's where the journey starts. Here's the psychological trick. Don't think, I need $100,000. That number's too big. Instead, break it down. $100,000 divided by 10 years is $10,000 per year. That's about $833 per month. Suddenly, the target looks different. Over 5 years, you'd need to put away roughly $1,667 per month on average. Over 3 years, it's roughly $2,778 per month. And that's before considering investment growth. The point isn't that everyone should save the same amount. The point is that large financial goals become much easier to understand when you convert them into smaller targets. You don't build $100,000 in one transaction. You build it through hundreds of smaller decisions. One paycheck, one investment, one avoided purchase, one additional income stream, repeated over and over. This is probably the most overlooked part of the entire strategy. If you want to build wealth faster, don't only ask, how can I spend less? Ask, how can I become more valuable? Because there's a limit to how much you can cut. You can cancel subscriptions, eat out less, buy cheaper clothes, drive less. But eventually, you've reached the floor. Income doesn't have the same limitation. You can learn a skill, change jobs, negotiate your salary, work overtime, freelance, start a small business, build a digital product, create content, or develop a specialized skill that companies are willing to pay more for. For example, imagine someone increases their annual income from $50,000 to $70,000. That's a $20,000 difference before taxes. They don't need to become a genius investor. They simply created more money to work with. This is why your first $100,000 is often more about earning power than investment returns. Your goal should be to create a gap between what you earn and what you spend, and then turn that gap into assets. Before aggressively investing every dollar you make, build a foundation. Start by understanding where your money's going. For 1 month, track everything: housing, food, transportation, subscriptions, shopping, entertainment, debt payments, everything. You may discover something surprising. The problem isn't always one giant expense. It's often dozens of small financial leaks happening every month. Next, build an emergency fund appropriate for your situation. The purpose isn't to get rich. The purpose is to prevent one unexpected expense from forcing you into high-interest debt or forcing you to sell investments at the wrong time. And then comes another important step: deal with expensive debt. High-interest credit card debt can work against your wealth-building efforts. Imagine investing money while simultaneously paying a very high interest rate on revolving debt. You're trying to move forward while something is pulling you backward. So before obsessing over becoming an investor, make sure your financial foundation isn't collapsing underneath you. Now we get to the heart of the strategy. You need a gap. The gap is simply income minus expenses. If you earn $5,000 a month and spend $4,800, your gap is $200. That's a start. But if you earn $7,000 and spend $4,500, your gap becomes $2,500. Now, you have serious wealth building power. And here's where many people get trapped. They increase their income and immediately increase their lifestyle. They get a raise and buy a better car. They get a bonus and book an expensive vacation. They start making more money and move into a more expensive apartment. Their income rises, their lifestyle rises, their wealth barely moves. This is called lifestyle inflation. You don't have to live like you're poor forever. But during the early stages of wealth building, consider letting your income grow faster than your lifestyle. Every raise doesn't need to become a new monthly bill. Now, your money needs somewhere to go. This is where investing enters the picture. The goal isn't simply to accumulate cash. The goal is to gradually acquire assets that can potentially grow in value or produce income. Depending on someone's situation, that could include diversified investments, such as broad market index funds, retirement accounts, or other assets they understand and can afford. The important word is diversified. You don't need to find the next stock that goes up 1,000%. You don't need to predict the next market crash. You don't need to constantly trade. In fact, trying to get rich quickly through speculation can destroy years of progress. The boring strategy is often more sustainable. Earn money, save money, invest consistently, stay diversified, keep costs low, give your investments time, and repeat. Here's where things get interesting. Imagine someone invests $1,000 per month. That's $12,000 per year. Without considering investment growth, they'd contribute $60,000 over 5 years. But investments don't necessarily sit still. If the money grows over time, the portfolio can potentially become larger than the amount contributed. That's the power of compounding. Your money earns returns. Those returns can generate additional returns. And eventually, your portfolio starts doing more of the heavy lifting. But here's something important. Compounding works in both directions. Money invested consistently can compound. High-interest debt can compound too. That's why wealthy financial habits aren't simply about finding investments. They're also about avoiding financial decisions that quietly compound against you. Let's imagine 3 different approaches. The slow builder. You invest $500 per month. That's $6,000 per year. It won't make you rich overnight, but consistency matters. After several years, you could have built a meaningful portfolio. The aggressive builder. Now imagine someone invests $1,500 per month. That's $18,000 per year. They're putting 3 times as much money to work. Again, investment returns aren't guaranteed. But the larger contribution gives compounding more fuel. The income accelerator. Now imagine someone starts at $500 per month. Then, they spend 2 years developing their career or business. Their income rises. Their monthly investment eventually rises to $1,000. Then, $1,500. Then, $2,000. This is often a much more realistic way to think about the first $100,000. Don't obsess over finding a magical investment. Build the ability to invest more money every year. The first $10,000 is psychologically important. You've proven something to yourself. You can save. You can delay gratification. You can follow a plan. Now protect that progress. Don't suddenly think, I have money, time to spend it. Instead, increase your financial margin. Continue building your emergency reserves if needed. Continue investing. Continue increasing your income. And most importantly, don't confuse having money with being wealthy. A person can have $10,000 in the bank and thousands of dollars of high-interest debt. Another person can have a smaller cash balance, but own productive assets and have strong financial habits. Net worth matters more than appearances. At $50,000, something begins to change. You're no longer starting from zero. Your decisions become more powerful. A 1% improvement in your financial life means more when your assets are larger. You also begin to see the psychological difference. The first few $1,000s can feel painfully slow. Then you look back and realize you went from $0 to $10,000 to $25,000 to $50,000. The goal becomes less about getting rich. It becomes about protecting and growing what you've built. And then eventually, you reach it. $100,000. It may not feel like the moment you imagined. There may be no fireworks, no dramatic music. Maybe you simply open your account one morning and realize, I actually did it. But the real victory isn't the number. It's what the number represents. You learned how to earn. You learned how to save. You learned how to control your lifestyle. You learned how to invest. You learned patience. And most importantly, you built a system that can continue working after the first $100,000. Because once you've built the machine, the next milestone doesn't have to feel impossible. Here's the biggest lesson. Your first $100,000 probably won't come from one incredible investment. It will probably come from ordinary actions repeated for years, increasing your income, keeping your expenses under control, avoiding destructive debt, investing consistently, buying productive assets, and refusing to spend every dollar simply because you earned it. You don't need to become wealthy overnight. You need to become financially stronger every year. Because wealth isn't usually created in one giant moment. It's created quietly, while nobody's watching. $1 at a time, one decision at a time, 1 year at a time, and one day you look at the number and realize the first $100,000 wasn't the finish line. It was proof that the system works. If you found this useful, subscribe for more videos about money, wealth, business, and the psychology behind financial success. And remember, don't chase the appearance of wealth. Build the assets that create it.